right after, a few minutes after the baptism. But I locked myself out of my office. I forgot to take my change of clothes up with me. So I did get in. Can't feel my right shoulder. Note to my secretary, we need to replace the lock that's between the two offices. It's now gone. But the door and the glass in the door are intact. See, it's my philosophy that when I do stupid things, I need to tell you first. Because if you all find out, it's worse.
Amen.
Then the story gets all blown all out of proportion and make me look even sillier and dumber than I probably am. Rick, thank you for the privilege of allowing me to baptize you.
Thank you, buddy.
I appreciate it. I don't take that lightly. Dr. Paul Brand is a leprosy specialist. He states that except in the very early stages of leprosy, the patient does not feel physical pain. And that, in fact, is the problem, because after the leprosy bacilli, or the bacteria, deaden the nerve cells, the patients are no longer alert to danger, and they proceed, generally speaking, to damage their own bodies. A leprosy patient may walk around all day on a sharp metal screw or use a splintery hammer or scratch an infected spot on the eyeball. Each of these acts destroys the tissue and may eventually lead to a loss of limb or vision, but at no point does the patient actually feel the pain. He doesn't feel the physical pain of what he's doing or what she is doing. Though they may not hurt, leprosy patients do suffer. Almost all the pain they feel comes from the outside, the pain of rejection imposed upon them by the surrounding community. Dr. Brand tells a story of his doing some treatment to a young man in India who was a leprosy patient. And so, through a translator, he began to describe to the patient the treatment that needed to be done, and he just, as he's describing the treatment, he put his hand on the young man's shoulder, at which point the young man began to sob. And so Dr. Brand was concerned, so through the translator, he asked the young man, did I say something wrong? And the young man said, no. He said, it's been years since anyone's even touched me. And so, this morning, we have a true healing service that Hin cannot touch. And you see through the Gospels how Jesus intentionally touches people, whether physically, but at least verbally, with questions and concern to let that person know that they matter to Him. And so John said, these things are written to you that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and having believed you may have life in Him. And so if you would, turn to John chapter 5, please. This is sign everywhere, sign. We're on the third miracle that John decides to write about. Jesus said, all authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Jesus has total authority over everything. There's nothing outside His authority. Everyone and everything are subordinate to Jesus' authority. We saw it in nature as He turned water to wine. We saw it in His exercise of His authority over matters of life and death last week. And today we'll see it, Jesus Lord of the Sabbath, John 5. After this there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. Now, if you have a King James or a New King James, you probably have a verse 4 that mentions an angel. That verse is not in the original oldest Greek manuscripts, and so I am not going to read it. If you have an ESV or a New American Standard Bible, you probably skip from verse 3 to verse 5, which I'm going to do. The little verse about the angel was added later. It doesn't really add to the story, doesn't really detract from the story, but it doesn't really give you the point of the story. Verse 5, one man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I am going, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Get up, take up your bed and walk." And at once the man was healed, and he took up his bed and walked. Now that day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath, and it is not lawful for you to take up your bed." But he answered them, "The man who healed me, that man said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, 'Take up your bed and walk'?" Now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, as there was a crowd in the place. Afterward Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had healed him. And this was why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. But Jesus answered them, "My Father is working until now, and I am working." This was why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him, because not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God.